The views and opinions expressed on this program are those of the producers and the individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the staff of the Sun Prairie Media Center, its members or underwriters, the board members of the Media Center Commission, Charter Communications, TDS Telecom, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison Rabbit, and the man normally seated next to me is not here today. No Mike Roth joining me today. I'm going solo. I'm the real Han Solo here today, and I'm going to be bringing you several movies that I saw that are on the marquee, as well as a throwback to a fun movie from 1995. So let's get started. The first movie on the marquee this week is a film called Sherlock Gnomes. It is the sequel to the animated film Romeo and Juliet. If you know anything about that, it is garden gnomes who are telling the classic tale of Romeo and Juliet. This one, we have brought Sherlock Holmes and Watson into the mix. In this world, gnomes are disappearing all around every garden. The gnomes are disappearing without a trace. Sherlock Gnomes and Watson, along with the returning Romeo and Juliet, investigate it as all of their friends are gone. There's a character well known in the Sherlock Holmes universe, Moriarty, who is his greatest foil, who Sherlock Holmes suspects is part of this plot to make gnomes disappear. He just can't figure out why, how, or where they are. You also have the Romeo and Juliet storyline continuing as they have been together for a while and they go through their issues, as relationships do after they've been together for a while. The fairy tale romance from the first film has settled into a real relationship and all the things that go along with that. For some reason in this film, there is, and it's really unexplained, there is a strong Elton John theme where Elton John's music is put in as like a bed underneath a lot of the action scenes, and it's not explained why, and it's sometimes almost unnoticeable. You'll all of a sudden realize like that's Benny and the Jets for some reason, and I don't know why, but I think if you enjoyed the first film, this is quite a bit like it. A little more watered down, I think, than Romeo and Juliet. I actually really enjoy the first one. This one is full of, it's full of gnome puns. So if you enjoy that, there's plenty of that for you. It's fun, it's harmless, it's 86 minutes. So it moves along really quickly. I mean, it's barely a movie at that length. And it's a fun enough time. You have Johnny Depp voicing Sherlock Gnomes. Emily Blunt returns as Juliet. Michael Caine is in this, and James McAvoy as Romeo. So it's a fun voice cast. And I took my daughter to it. She loved it. She had a lot of fun. I had some laughs in there. I enjoyed the original more than I did this. I know it's silly to say about a Gnomes movie, but it was fun enough, but there was nothing spectacular about it. And so I ended up giving Sherlock Gnomes 2.5 out of 5 stars. If it sounds interesting, it's worth watching. There's nothing bad about it. But the next movie on the marquee is a film from director Scott Speer called Midnight Sun. Midnight Sun stars Bella Thorne as a young girl named Katie. Katie suffers from this rare disease called XP, in which she can't be exposed to the sun. The sun, the UV rays, cause serious damage. They can, be fatal to her if exposed enough. And so she is stuck for her entire lifetime up to this point. She's a senior in high school, living inside her home, not really being exposed to anything outside. It kind of sets up similar to the film from 2017, Everything, Everything, where the young girl has airborne disease so that she can't breathe outside air, and so she's locked inside her house and has to view the world from inside the snow globe, as it were. So this one, Bella Thorne, Katie is she watches the world go by her window, and one of the things that she watches go by is this boy Charlie, who over the years, from when she was a kid all the way up till now, she watches him skateboard by her house every day, and she forms this crush on a boy she's never met. Katie's mom passed away when Katie was very young, so it is just her and her dad, played by Rob Riggle, and they have this great relationship. They have a really fun relationship between the two of them, and Rob Riggle is actually surprisingly really good in this movie. He's mostly known as a comedic actor, and in this one he has some depth, and he actually has a pretty powerful performance as a guy who has lost his wife, is doing everything he can not to lose his daughter, and he still brings some fun, the goofiness of just being a dad who likes to embarrass his daughter, and who it just has this heavy weight on him, trying to keep her alive. So the weird thing about the movie is that sunlight is dangerous to her, but she can go out at night. But for some reason, it seems like she's trapped inside. Like she's never really met anyone. She has one friend. She's never really gone out and mingled in society at all. And it seems like in a small town, this would be a horrible thing to have, where you can only go out at night, but at night everything is closed. And so she goes out one night and she's playing her music because she loves being a musician, and she's out there at night just playing for herself. And we have this great little meet cute with Charlie, where she finally gets to meet Charlie. She leaves behind her notebook, which she has all her song lyrics and such in. He finds it. It's the big meet cute. Charlie, of course, is like Mr. Popular. He's the cool guy. He's the cute guy in school, but he's scarred. He's different. He's not like those kids that you would expect in this role. And so he sees something in her. She sees something in him. She doesn't tell him that she has this rare disease, though, because she likes the opportunity to feel normal for the first time. And so she kind of goes along with, I can only hang out at night. I'm busy during the day, but we can go out for a date at night, Charlie. And it's kind of this weird, like, Cinderella mixed with a vampire story, where she has to be home before the sun hits, or bad things are going to happen. And of course, she falls in love with Charlie. What is she willing to risk for this boy? The movie kind of weirdly, really timidly introduces this storyline of your prototypical snobby girl, the snobby cheerleader, the popular girl who seemingly has the hots for Charlie, and she does not like this new girl who just shows up out of nowhere, who Charlie's hanging out with. And you think that this is going to be something, and then they just kind of drop that, which it was weird that they introduced it and did nothing with it. But the movie itself is a little better than I thought it would be. It felt like I had seen this before, but it was actually better, and I think the strength of it is the performances. Bella Thorne was really good. Charlie is played by Patrick Schwarzenegger, who we know as the son of Arnold and Maria Shriver, and Patrick Schwarzenegger was really good as Charlie. I was actually really impressed with him. Of course, as I said, Rob Riggle, I really enjoyed his performance in a more dramatic role than comedic role. Now, there's some weird rules in this movie that they kind of play with. In the final act of this film, I thought got really hokey. She can't go out in the daytime, except for sometimes, I guess, if she wears a hoodie, she can go out during the day. They aren't really consistent about the cause and effect of this XP disease and what happens if she gets exposed to the sunlight. Is she the vampire Lestat? Will she burn instantly, or does she just get a lesion? What happens? But overall, I think it's a really above average teen romance, almost rom-com, but it's above average. I was surprised by that, especially from Scott Spear, who's a director who really hasn't done a lot of this. He does a lot of music videos and such things like that. And so I would recommend it. I give Midnight Sun 3 out of 5 stars. I think it's a worthwhile watch. It was better than I was planning on. I did not see Unsane, however. Mike had seen Unsane. You see that on screen there? Yep, moving along. The next film I have on the marquee is kind of the big movie from this week. It is the film that finally usurped Black Panther at the box office after 6 weeks of Black Panther dominating the box office. We have Pacific Rim Uprising, the sequel to the big hit Guillermo del Toro film from a few years ago, in which the world is attacked by these giant monsters called kaijus. And the kaijus come in through this breach, and we as humans have to build these giant robots in which to take them down, these Jaegers. In the original, we had Charlie Hunnam and Idris Elba, and they don't return for this one. Most of the cast that you would know from the first one, as well as Guillermo del Toro as director, do not return in this one. Instead, we have Stephen DeKnight, who steps into the director's chair, and John Boyega is in. He plays Idris Elba's son from the original film. He is kind of operating on the other side of the law when we first meet him. He is leading a group of scavengers who are out trying to steal parts from old Jaegers and trying to build their own. And he runs into this young girl, Amara, played by Kaylee Spaney, who is this young girl who has built her own robot, and it is functional, and it's small, but it does the job, and she shows some promise. And they are captured by the good guys, I guess, led by Scott Eastwood, who is kind of the head of the Ranger School, preparing us for the next attack if it should ever happen. And we keep alluding to John Boyega's history, that he was a ranger, and that he might have been the best who never became. He never lived up to his potential. And there's a lot of simmering, a lot of things that are alluded to, and to me it felt like it was just things that were thrown in to try and make his character more interesting. They never developed a lot of that. It was just kind of a lot of things to build this tension between he and Eastwood's character. And so, for whatever reason, as these two criminals are captured, they're forced into Ranger School. It would be like capturing criminals and be like, okay, now you have to join our army and fight for us. And so they're forced into Ranger School. This is a paper-thin plot to a robot versus monsters movie. But they're forced in, and the only returning characters we really bring back from the original are the two scientists, led by Charlie Day, who saved the day, literally, no pun intended, in the first movie. He is now kind of a celebrity. He is working with this group who is building drones as robots to act as protection. You've seen this in the RoboCop films, where we have to replace the human factor with a drone robot factor, and he's helping to build that, but he's not 100% on point after the events of the first movie, after mind melding, as it were, drifting with the kaiju as he did in the first film. There's some lingering effects to him, and so in this film, it's a lot of this film feels like it's been borrowed from other films. I've had some discussions this week with other people who've seen this film, and to me, this film feels very much like the plot of the Independence Day Resurgence film that came out a couple years ago, which was a really, really terrible film. And so much of this script and the plot points within it are lifted right from that. The father, who is the hero in the first movie, not returning for this one, so we're focused on his son and the effects of that. The fact that alien technology left over from the first film in the first war is going to be used because, a decade later or so, the monsters from the first one, the aliens, return, and we have to fight them. The only real characters brought back from the original film are the scientists, just like in Independence Day, and there's a lot of daddy issues in this film. So much of it is really borrowed from that, which is an unoriginal movie to begin with. And this movie, for me, it falls into the trap of what a lot of these types of sequels fall into, which is make it bigger, make it more explosive. There's even a line in the movie where they're talking to Amara, and one of the characters says, "Hey, next time, make it bigger." And that feels like the philosophy of this film. Like, well, we don't have Guillermo del Toro and the artistic vision that he has, and we don't have the acting cast that we had in the first one, so we have to just make things bigger, make things blow up more. Unfortunately, Charlie Hunnam, who was in the original, who I really enjoyed as Jax in the Sons of Anarchy series, I haven't been in love with his theatrical persona, but I missed him in this because replacing him with Scott Eastwood has the presence and personality of wet cardboard, and it shows in this movie. He's a C-level replacement in this film. He just doesn't have what it takes for me to really care in this movie. And there's Guillermo del Toro, I mean, who just won the Academy Award for Best Direction and Best Film for Shape of Water, known for his visual acuity and just what amazing things he's able to get onto the screen. This movie felt like it was trying to do that, but some of the CGI was really rough. Some of the kaijus looked like they were Power Ranger villains, and that's not good. That's not a compliment. And they just looked generic. They didn't look like anything special. And it made me realize how desperately I missed Guillermo del Toro, Idris Elba, Charlie Hunnam, all the characters in this universe. And I don't think you needed to bring back those characters. I just think you needed to find more interesting characters in this. And I don't think that Scott Eastwood's character was interesting enough, and I don't think a lot of the other secondary, tertiary characters were interesting enough to cover up for the fact that the script was weak. It was kind of redundant from films we've seen before. As I said, I was speaking with some people after I saw this. I had a couple of people compare it in their minds. They thought that this was really reminded them of Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. That's not a it's a fair comparison, but it's not a compliment because that movie was pretty terrible as well. And if you're just borrowing from these movies, which relied on the concept of make it bigger, make things blow up, I thought that a movie like this, of course, you're going to have a lot of montages. We got to build these things. We got to find our attack plan. So there was a lot of montages set to this horribly generic, like crunch rock metal music that just seemed like it was placeholder music for better things that were never put in. And so, unfortunately, I was really excited for this film when it was announced because I did enjoy the original quite a bit. I still do. But when this film was announced, I was quite excited. And as it got closer to release, my excitement started to wane, which is sometimes a great thing. Sometimes you go into a movie with low expectations and it actually pays off, and it's better that way. This film, though, it just didn't pay off for me. I wasn't having the fun that I was hoping for in a movie with giant robots fighting giant monsters, and there should be so much fun going on, and those moments were few and far between for me. And so unfortunately, I give Pacific Rim Uprising 1.5 out of 5 stars. It's a brutal score. Now, Mike had told me that he gave this movie 3 stars, and I wish he was here so we could get into what he saw that propelled a 3-star score from him. But I cannot recommend this movie. I understand that it made big business and it was #1 at the box office this week, but that box office doesn't represent quality in films. I point to all the Transformers movies for that. So I cannot recommend Pacific Rim Uprising, unfortunately. All right, let's take a moment here to look back at a movie for our movie throwback segment. We were kind of tossing around different ideas about what movie we could throw back to. And there's various movies you could throw back to off of Pacific Rim Uprising. But then there was Midnight Sun, which is interesting. And as soon as the idea of there's a girl who can't go outside, the sunlight does damage to her, instantly brought to mind a movie from 1995 called Powder. Powder is a film brought to us by Victor Salva, starring Sean Patrick Flannery as the titular character, Powder. He is this off-the-charts genius who is an albino that I guess frightens people. I'm not 100% sure why they're frightened by him other than he's different, and he's in this little backwoods town. He's been living with his grandparents and pretty much been holed up in their basement and just devouring every book. He has the highest IQ ever recorded, we find out later. But his grandparents die, and he is discovered by a sheriff, played by Lance Hendrickson, who comes in along with Mary Steenburgen to try and help him and figure out what his issue is. For some reason, the response is to quickly throw him into reform school, which I never quite understand, but he's thrown into reform school where, obviously he is very different, and so he draws the ire of the bullies in the school, led by Bradford Tatum, who is the main bully. Bradford Tatum is a guy who I love. He was in an underrated film right around this time called Stoned Age, where he played the lead character. In this movie, though, he is the big jerk who is going out of his way to make life miserable for Powder. Now, Powder has special powers. Besides just being a genius, he also has powers that not everyone understands. He is in a science class taught by Jeff Goldblum, which I would love to be in that science class anytime Jeff Goldblum's teaching. He's the fly himself. And he is struck by electricity and absorbs these strange powers, and it leads to this really weird unveiling of his character, where we see that one of his powers is that he can act as almost an empath, where he can read feelings and project feelings from one person to another. He can transfer these feelings. My issue with this movie is I remember really enjoying it when I saw this in 1995. I remember thinking it was really cool. It was really different. There's some really cool effects in this movie. Now, those effects do not hold up really well, and the like pancake makeup they put on Sean Patrick Flannery to make him the albino is pretty rough. In 2018, you can really see the makeup packed on. He looks more like a mime than an albino. But we don't get to know Powder enough. We see how the world affects him and how he attempts to change the world with what he is capable of, but we don't really get to know what drives him. And that's the one thing that I wanted out of this movie, because it introduces some interesting things about him, but ultimately I'm kind of left feeling like I don't know Powder that much, and instead it is more along the lines of this small-minded community and the we fear what we don't understand concept, which is an easy concept, but I wanted more from this, and I wanted more from the character of Powder, which I thought was an interesting character. Now, interestingly, this movie was a moderate success at the time, nothing huge, but it did well enough that it was actually remade into a movie called Alag, A-L-A-G, in Bollywood. It was a big Bollywood picture, which I haven't seen. I just discovered this recently, and I kind of want to check it out. But yeah, Powder from 1995. It's an interesting film. I think if you haven't seen it and it looks interesting to you, it's worth checking out. It's fun enough. It was a little disappointing that it didn't hold up to what my memory was of this movie. All right, let's take a look ahead. I'm so used to having someone else here to bounce off of. It's so weird not having that second voice. But maybe I should have got a cutout of George Lucas and sat it right here. It would have been perfect. Let's take right here, George Lucas. Let's take a look ahead at what is going to be coming out the week of April 6th. We have 4 movies that are going to be in the box office that weekend. The first one is Blockers. It is the R-rated comedy starring John Cena and Ike Barinholtz. And it is about 3 parents who discover that their teen daughters might be going out to have sex for the first time. They discover on their computers that a conversation that leads them to believe that things are going to happen, And it is up to these three parents to stop that from happening. They are going to block their daughters. It is appears to be a very R-rated comedy, and introduces John Cena again. It feels like his last couple movies have been the R-rated comedies. He was in Amy Schumer's. Oh gosh, now I'm drawing a blank on the movie from a couple of years ago. Trainwreck. He was in that as well. But this puts him in more of a starring role. It's kind of the nerdy dad. He's kind of playing a against type guy who looks like Captain America, but is playing the nerdy dad. So that's going to be coming up, blockers. The next film is a biography about the time period in American history when the Kennedys were rising to power and Ted Kennedy had a problem. The film is called Chappaquiddick. It is a biography about Ted Kennedy and of course, Chappaquiddick, the famous time when he drunkenly drove into a river and let a young lady die, and the circumstances surrounding that and how it affected the family of the Kennedys who were rising to power and trying to save face, and how it affected the Camelot that was the Kennedys. The next movie we have is The Miracle Season. It stars Helen Hunt as a high school girls volleyball coach. The star player on their team, they were returning from a championship, the star player, Caroline the Line, passes away, and the team falls into disrepair, and it is the story of, can they overcome? Can this team who lost their star and they're flailing about looking for someone to lead them? Who will step up? Will this actually happen? Will it be the miracle season that the title says? I think the spoiler's in the title. But that is coming out April 6th. And then last but not least is a new, really interesting horror film starring Emily Blunt, John Krasinski, you know him as Jim from The Office. It's called A Quiet Place. It's set in a time where we don't quite know everything, but it looks like a very post-apocalyptic, real wasteland type of time where monsters have taken over. I don't know, perhaps a Cloverfield monster, and they hone in on sound. And so this one family has to live their life by making zero noise, because as soon as you make a sound, it attracts the monsters, and here they come. And it looks really interesting, and it looks like an original concept. I haven't seen something like this before, where the sound will attract the monsters, so the whole movie is rather quiet. The family speaks in sign language and does a lot of interesting things to stay quiet. So A Quiet Place will be coming out April 6th. Before I leave you, I have to thank our sponsor for Real Reviews, The Palace. Marcus Theaters, Marcus Cinemas, The Palace here in Sun Prairie. Thank you for sponsoring our show. We do appreciate it. We have an event coming up, which we'll be putting more information up on our Facebook page, but we have an event coming up at the Palace on May 5th, which I'm really excited for. We'll be celebrating our anniversary of sorts, celebrating going over 200 episodes, 4 years here on the station, never missing a week. And so we are going to have a fun fundraising get-together, and we hope that you can join us on May 5th. I think I said April. May 5th. We are going to be showing Avengers Infinity War. We'll have popcorn. We'll have soda. Who knows what else. Come on out if you want to get tickets. We'll have information for everything on our Facebook page. So if you haven't already, make sure you like us on Facebook, Real Reviews TV, or you can also find us on Twitter at Real Reviews TV. I'll put all the information on how to acquire tickets for that. But 3 p.m. on May 5th, come join us. $25 will get you a ticket to see Avengers, get some popcorn, get some soda, all happening at the Marcus Theater. Come sit in your dream loungers and join us. As I said, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. And if you want to find previous episodes, we have 205 episodes at sunprairiemediacenter.com. There's an on-demand feature there where you can play any of these previous episodes, or you can find us on YouTube. If that's easier for you, just search Real Reviews, K-Sun, K-S-U-N. Next week, we're going to be talking about Ready Player One. We're going to be talking about acrimony, and I truly hope that there's another guy sitting next to me for next week. But until that time, I'm Jamison. Have a good one.